I am very excited about today's lecture. Today we are talking about all the various career options and educational requirements in forensic psychology. Most likely you are considering entering the field of forensics, but is not quite sure what direction to take or even what type of job-related choices there are to choose from. Well, I would like to challenge you that by the end of this lecture, you will gravitate towards one or two of forensic psychology's subfields based on your individual interests, personality, and professional goals. Now, grab a pen and paper to take notes. Are you ready? Okay, let's get started. Since the 1970s, there has been an enormous expansion of the profession of psychology in general, as well as the field of forensic psychology. Now, psychology encompasses a wide spectrum of topics ranging from engineering designs, which is human factors, to animal behavior, and it has a place in every imaginable setting. Psychologists can be found in personnel selection and training, developing user-friendly computer software, the delivery of psychological services to victims of natural and man-made disasters, the profiling of serial killers, the creation of effective commercials that increase the sale of a product, and so on. Now, in 2015, there were approximately 77,000 professional members of the American Psychological Association, or the APA. Today, the practice of forensic psychology is evident in numerous contexts. Here are a few examples of things that forensic psychologists may be asked to do in addition to working in the academic settings. Now, this is where I want you to pay special attention. I'm going to go over the 5 subspecialties in forensic psychology, and I want you to write down each job-related activity that you may want to do. That is how you are going to determine which field to go into in forensic psychology. Now, let us first go over police and public safety psychology. Persons entering this subspecialty may assist police departments in determining optimal shift schedules for their employees, or establish reliable and valid screening procedures for public safety officer positions at various law enforcement, fire, first responder, fish and wildlife, police, and sheriff's department, or perform fitness for duty evaluations of officers after a critical incident, such as a hostage-taking situation ended in multiple deaths, or train police officers on how to assist with mentally ill persons, or provide counseling and debriefing services to officers after a shooting incident. Also, to provide support services to the families of law enforcement officers, and inform police of the research evidence regarding the reliability of eyewitness identification. And also to help detectives solve crime, such as by examining a crime scene. Now, if any of these job-related duties interests you, you may be interested in police and public safety psychology. Now, let's move on to legal psychology. Legal psychology would include or cover personnel who conduct child custody evaluations, visitation risk assessments, and child abuse evaluations, or assist attorneys in jury selection through community surveys and other research methods, or perform evaluations of a defendant's competency to stand trial, or testify at a trial in which the defendant has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and evaluate civil capacities such as the capacity to make a will or consent to treatment, or testify before a legislative committee on relationships between aggression and violent video games, or provide outpatient psychotherapy to individuals who have been ordered to receive treatment by the court, and assess hardships suffered by individuals threatened with deportation during immigration proceedings. Now, all these job-related activities fall under legal psychology. Now, let's move on to psychology of crime and delinquency. You would be evaluating the effectiveness of intervention strategies designed to prevent violent behavior during adolescence, or conduct research on the development of psychopathy, or consult with legislators and governmental agencies as a research policy advisor on responses to stalking, or consult with school personnel on identifying troubled youth who are a potential threat to other students, or developing a psychological measure for assessing risk or harm to self or others among the mentally ill, and inform the legal community about research on decision-making in adolescence. If you're interested in any of these job-related activities, you may be interested in the subspecialty of psychology of crime and delinquency. Now let's move on to victimology and victim services. You would then be required to evaluate persons who are the victims of crime or witnesses to a crime. Or you would be conducting psychological assessments for personal injury matters related to auto accidents, product liability, sexual harassment and discrimination, medical negligence, workers' compensation, or disability. Or educate and train victim service providers on psychological reactions to criminal victimization, such as post-traumatic stress disorder. You could also be conducting forensic assessments of victims of persecution and torture for evidence at immigration hearings, or access, support, and counsel those who provide death notification services. You could also educate service providers on the impact of multiculturalism when victims seek mental health and supported services. Now, if you're interested in any of what I just spoke of, you may be interested in the subspecialty of victimology and victim services. Now, let's dive into correctional psychology. You would be assessing inmates entering jail or prison for both mental health needs and suitability for treatment and rehabilitation programs, or assessing prisoners for risk in parole decision making, or assessing violence risk in juveniles and adults. You could also be evaluating the effectiveness of programs for juvenile and adult offenders, such as victim offender reconciliation programs, sex offender treatment programs, violence prevention, or health education programs. You could also be conducting sexual violent predator assessments, or establishing reliable and valid screening procedures for correctional officer positions at correctional facilities, Or you could be offering mental health treatment to adults and juveniles in correctional settings. If you're interested in any of the job-related topics I just spoke of, you would be interested in the correctional psychology subfield of forensic psychology. Now, in addition to the list that I just reviewed, forensic psychologists teach in colleges and universities and conduct research that is relevant to the legal system, such as research on eyewitness testimony and comprehension of constitutional rights and jury decision making. The work settings in which forensic psychologists are found include, but are not limited to, the following: private practice, family, drug, and mental health courts, child protection agencies, victim services, domestic violence courts and programs, forensic mental health units, both governmental or private, sex offender treatment programs, correctional institutions, including research programs, law enforcement agencies, both federal and state, research organizations, both governmental or private, colleges and universities, either teaching or research, juvenile delinquency treatment programs, and legal advocacy centers, for example, for immigrants, prisoners, the mentally ill, or intellectually disabled. Now, I'm hoping with the short description of each subfield, you guys could receive some idea of what subspecialty you want to study. In my next few lectures, I'm going to go more in detail of the 5 subspecialties of forensic psychology. The number of college and universities that offer at least one undergraduate course in forensic psychology has grown rapidly over the past decade in the United States, and many of those courses tend to be very popular. A similar pattern exists in the United Kingdom and in Canada. While many colleges and universities offer undergraduate courses in forensic psychology or psychology and law, very few offer specific majors or concentrations in the field at the undergraduate level. As most psychology undergraduates become quickly aware, the bachelor's degree provides a basic foundation in psychology, but it does not adequately prepare a person to be a professional psychologist. The minimum educational requirement for psychologists is the master's degree, but that degree is also limited. Psychology is a doctoral level profession. In some states, graduates of master's degree programs in psychology with the appropriate clinical training may be eligible for licensure as a psychological associate, or the LPA, or as a master's level psychologist. Now, graduates with a master's degree in psychology may also qualify for positions in school or industrial organization, also known as IO. Now, although most states prohibit them from using the professional title of psychologist, they are called master's level psychologists. The term psychologist is usually reserved for individuals with a doctorate degree. If the graduate with a master's degree obtain several years of experience in business or industry, he or she may be eligible to obtain a position in consulting or in market research. In some states, graduates with a master's degree in psychology may be licensed with non-psychology titles, such as licensed mental health counselor or marriage and family therapist or psychotherapists. The most common master's degree in psychology are in clinical, counseling, or in IO psychology. Now, at the doctoral level, clinical psychology attracts the largest number of students of all the applied specialties. The PhD degree, which is the Doctor of Philosophy, requires a dissertation and is well accepted in the academic world as appropriate preparation for scientists and scholars in many fields across the globe. It is regarded primarily as a research-based degree. A dissertation refers to a substantial paper based on the PhD candidate's original research, which should take a significant contribution to the research literature. Now, the Sci.D., which is the Doctor of Psychology, is a graduate degree designed primarily for students who wish to become practitioners or clinicians rather than researchers. Professional psychologists are also ethically obligated to comply with the standards pertaining to their practice, as outlined by the ethical principles of psychologists and code of conduct. This is also known as the EPPCC. Now, guidelines are also offered in a number of areas associated with research and clinical practice. A good example is the specialty guidelines for forensic psychology. All requirements of the doctorate can be completed in about 4 to 6 years of full-time study beyond the undergraduate degree. The internship setting for students interested in forensic psychology can be at sites that provide a forensic experience, such as courts, clinics, forensic hospitals, or assessment centers. Every state in the U.S. have laws related to the licensure of psychologists. Professional psychologists are also ethically obligated to comply with standards pertaining to their practice. Now let's dive into forensic psychology as a specialty. Regardless of the debate over how broadly or narrowly forensic psychology should be defined, the growth in the field is demonstrated by the continuing development of graduate programs throughout the world. One interesting path is that taken by individuals who pursue joint degree training. They earn both a PhD and a Juris Doctor degree in law, which is also known as the JD, at the same time, or associated instruction. Some decide on a PhD and a master's degree in legal studies. The joint degree, though not necessary for forensic psychologists, is a good option for graduate students feeling a strong pull towards both psychology and the law. It is a mistake to believe you need a degree specifically in forensic psychology to work in the field, however. Many graduate programs in clinical psychology, counseling psychology, and in criminal justice, among others, have forensic concentrations that provide students with academic and training opportunities in forensic psychology. Now, furthermore, many psychologists recommend a broad background in psychology, such as would be obtained by a clinical or counseling degree, rather than a degree in forensic psychology. The choice one makes can depend upon numerous factors: the ability for a mentor, the content of courses offered, the opportunity for internships, funding, the geographic area, and the reputation of the program, among other considerations. And as you know, they are police and public safety psychology, legal psychology, psychology of crime and delinquency, victimology and victim services, and correctional psychology.